Okay, so now that we have rough translations for chapter 297, I want to go over the prison break real quick, explain exactly what happened, and then I want to go into what is likely going to be the new League of Villains, or just the new villain faction in My Hero from this point of the story going forward. So it was revealed at the end of chapter 296 that All For One was still in control of Shigaraki's body, and that his plan was to just immediately, following, the fallout of the war, go to Tartarus, the maximum security prison in Japan that's holding all of the most dangerous quirk users / villains, and just raid that thing and bust his original body out of it. The one that's been confined there since season 3 when he was defeated by All Might with the respirator and everything. Get that body out. But also in chapter 297, he reveals that he also planned to get more villains out of there as well, which we can assume to just supplement his own forces, because obviously he can't just run everything by himself, or at least not currently. So with the aid of many of his near high-end Nomus, he successfully raids Tartarus here, gets past all of the security and the robots and the guards and everything. And while doing this, he also destroys the surveillance tower, so that's out of the way. And then I guess does some kind of EMP attack or something. It's described as such here. This short circuits the cells and everything, and the doors start to unlock. Now, what is he doing here? It's not made explicitly clear, but maybe it's possibly that same kind of radio wave blast quirk that we saw him use earlier when he was going against Izuku and Bakugo in the war. Maybe he can use that to just disrupt the signals that are, going through Tartarus or something like that possibly. I assume it has to be him, since at this point, I don't think the prisoners are still able to use their quirks yet, but I don't know, maybe if we get more information, it'll be revealed, but I'm pretty sure this was All For One / Shigaraki's doing. Now, once the cells start to unlock, we see some of the villains emerging from them, such as Muscular, Moonfish. These are the two guys that we saw back at the beginning of season 3 from the original Vanguard Action Squad. We actually haven't seen those characters since that arc. And also there's this new female character that we haven't seen yet, but she says the system isn't responding to my quirk. Guess Tartarus is really falling. So that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the EMP stuff. Then she looks over to another cell, and it turns out that this is Overhaul's cell, and she goes over to it and opens the cell herself. And it's at this point we see this glowing stuff go over her hands, and I guess that's what her quirk is. It's really hard to make out exactly what her quirk could be based off of this. I mean, maybe she has the ability to unlock things. That would be a little too simplistic, but I mean, maybe it could be that. I mean, I guess it's got to be something powerful if she is locked up here with these, other really powerful, crazy villains. I guess she has to have something pretty formidable. But anyway, she opens up Overhaul's cell, and he immediately runs out of it. And he says, "Father," referring to the Yakuza boss, from that arc, the whole big integral part of Overhaul's story. So now that most, if not all of the villains are out of their cells and escaping Tartarus at this point, we come to the end of the chapter and we're outside of it. And we hear what I'm assuming is All For One's voice. And he's like, "If you want to leave this place, then follow me, friends, and witness me from the sidelines." And then Muscular looks up and he's like, "Shigaraki." And then we cut to the final panel and we see, the Shigaraki / All For One person standing there, but then also we see All For One himself, the original body with the respirator on. And he has the respirator attached to this machine. That's it. I guess he's telekinetically controlling at this point. And then he says, "As this marks the beginning of a transition into a new era and the birth of a more perfect demon lord. This is the story of how I will become the greatest demon lord." So yeah, this also goes back to what I was talking about, for a couple chapters now, and that's All For One's ultimate goal here is for himself to become the ultimate power within this world. He doesn't really want Shigaraki to be his successor, despite what he has said or kind of implied in the past. He's kind of just using Shigaraki for his ultimate goal here, and he's even still trying to play Shigaraki or just gaslighting him into thinking that that's not the case. They even have an internal struggle earlier on in this chapter when Shigaraki's like, "Hey, don't use my body. I don't want to just be a chess piece." And All For One continues to gaslight him. He's like, "Don't be mistaken. You're not a mere pawn. You're the most important piece of them all, my future king." And then I guess he's keeping Shigaraki captive within the vestige All For One quirk world or something like that. So now that we have an understanding of what's going on here, let's try to speculate about what's going to happen after this point, or what just the future of the League of Villains are going to be, or the new villain faction. We don't know their exact name. I'm assuming it might still be the League of Villains, although All For One was kind of ridiculing that name early on in the series. But anyway, I think we could just look at the characters that are focused on in this chapter. So Moonfish, we saw him, he broke out, he even was using his quirk, taking out some guards in retaliation. Muscular, of course, he was doing the same thing, tanking like multiple machine guns with his like, musculature quirk. And then that unnamed woman that we saw that, kind of looks like Ramona Flowers. I'm assuming since she's been focused on, she's going to be joining this new faction as well. I think that's extremely likely. So we're going to have a new female member of the League of Villains, which would be pretty cool. Then Overhaul, even though he wasn't, focused on anything else except father at that point, I'm assuming he's still going to probably join up with the League of Villains at this point, because All For One might be like, hey, I can help you. Just be my underling and then I'll help your father, or I'll even help you get your arms back, because that's another thing we see in this chapter. Overhaul's like running and like his, his sleeves are just flappy because, Shigaraki decayed his arms at the end of the Overhaul arc. So I'm sure All For One using his quirk or just something can regenerate Overhaul's limbs or something like that. Or maybe he has some kind of residual medical technology or something like that that Yujiko gave him that could like, I don't know, give his limbs back or something like that. Or All For One just takes Overhaul's quirk and now All For One has the Overhaul quirk itself, and that just makes him even more powerful than he already is. And that could also, I don't know, in theory, help him fix his body or fix Shigaraki's body, or just he can do so many things with that Overhaul quirk if he were to have it in his possession. But regardless, whatever really happens with Overhaul, whether his power is taken or he just joins their forces, I think he's important to the overall game here. So aside from them, we also see Kurogiri for one panel in this chapter. He's still like, in his restraints, as we saw him previously when Aizawa was trying to break through to him. It's not made clear if he broke out, but I'm assuming that he will. I mean, I think All For One might just manually grab him, because his quirk is a huge asset to, All For One and just the villains in general. But then another person that I'm pretty sure we see in this chapter as well for just one panel, actually next to Kurogiri's panel, is Stain. Now, I highly doubt that Stain will join the League of Villains or just All For One. I don't think that's going to happen at all. Stain made it pretty clear that he's against them and he doesn't like them. But I do think that Stain is going to break out of here, or at least I really hope that he does, because Stain is awesome and him coming back into the story would just make things that much better. So expect Stain, hopefully in the next chapter, to just do something. So we have All For One, who is going to take over as being the leader again, I assume. Then Shigaraki might be the number 2 again to this organization or something. It's really unclear where their relationship is headed at this point, but just taking a guess right now. So then we have Dabi. He successfully escaped from the war. Toga, she's MIA, but she escaped as well, so I'm sure that she's going to meet up with them. Spinner also made it out, so he's going to be in there. Mr. Compress, he got arrested along with Gigantomachia, so those two, at least right now, aren't going to be included in this new faction. Maybe they'll be broken out later or something, or maybe on their way back from Tartarus, they'll get them mid-transport possibly and break them out. That's not unheard of. It's happened in season 4, and it also happened in the second movie, so I'm sure something like this could happen again. Then Muscular is back, Moonfish is back. Very likely, like I said, Overhaul is going to be included in this to some extent. And we have that nameless woman as well. I'm pretty sure she's going to be included in this. And then also potentially Kurogiri. And then the near high ends are, I guess, by proxy included in that as well. Not sure what's going on with Yujiko. He was also arrested, so maybe they break him out as well. Potentially with Gigantomachia and Mr. Compress. But regardless, the League of Villains just really bolstered their forces again, and I'm so looking forward to what's going to happen after this point. But let me know what you think about this in the comments. If you liked the video, guys, please give it a like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.